Welcome back to Geek Warning, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz. It's Wednesday, March 8th, and I'm back with my good friends and colleagues. Now I can finally say colleagues. That's very exciting. Ronan McLaughlin and Dave Rome. How are you guys? Ronan first.
Hey, colleague. Nice to be a colleague.
It's much better versus volunteers.
Yes. It was a long stint as a volunteer. Very long stint. But we got there. So thank you to everyone that got us here.
So we should say right at the outset here that we're actually recording this with kind of a live audience on the internet. So we're not sitting at a bike shop with 100 people in front of us or anything like that. But we do have, 100 something people from our Discord, our private member Discord. If you out there are not already a member of Escape Collective and you would like to join in these live podcasts and perhaps have a chance to ask questions in real time and all these things that we're going to try to do today, well, then you got to sign up. So head over to escapecollective.cc and do that. And thank you very much in advance. Now, let's get into today's show. Ronan, I want to kick off with you. You added this to the run sheet, and I think I'm equally excited about this particular product. The new all-season GP5.
I don't think I did add this one to the run sheet, but
I'm going to throw it to you anyway. Ronan, tell me why you're excited about the new all-season GP5000.
Yeah. By the process of elimination, I think it was me. But yes, go ahead, Ronan.
No, Dave, walk away. I really do not want to steal your thunder on this one. I have some thoughts on it, but I certainly do not have a whole discussion on it.
No, why don't you introduce what it is at least?
Well, it's Continental.
We could say Continental now.
Can we say Conti? Conti's new. Well, it's effectively a new all season tire that has been like a winter bike tire for years, a favored winter bike tire for years, or all conditions tire for years, and it's an updated version of that, sort of based on the new line of GP5000 STR, which was a follow on from the original GP5000, and this is said to offer more grip, better puncture protection, better sidewall or tougher sidewalls, and is available in a range of sizes and with a hefty price tag. And that's pretty much as I know on this tire, because I thought somebody else was going to talk about it.
I mean, to dive a little deeper on that, it's the normal GP5000 STR has a 3-layer casing. This has 4, and I believe the tread depth is a reasonable amount deeper, so you get the puncture resistance that comes from that, but also the increased durability. In my mind, this is probably the most highly anticipated tubeless road tire in years, because the Conti has never had like sort of a training friendly tubeless road tire, and the 4 seasons that this is effectively, I guess, replacing, or at least is going to sit above it. That was a hugely popular tire, that Ronan said. But it was old. I mean, it was based on, if I'm not mistaken, it's like the GP3000 tread built on a Conti gator skin casing. So that is not a new tire. Like, that is something I remember training on when I was actually still fit, which was a long time ago. So it's
something I remember shunning a good 10, 12 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, I remember owning a set of 28s that I couldn't fit in my frame, in my brand new frame. So, I mean, it was that long ago. But yeah, it's cool to see Conti come out with this. But I guess the big thing that Ronan alluded to there is that it's terrifyingly expensive for a training tire or for an all-rounder tire. And the retail on this tire is €96 a piece, which is a lot.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of miscategorizing it, though? Is it truly a training tire? I've never really thought of the all season as a training tire, and in particular, if it's got all this new construction, it's like a sort of a true, more puncture resistant version of a GP5000. Then isn't that just an everyday tire? Which I guess you could call a training tire, but I don't know. Training tire has a negative connotation to it versus like, I ride my bike all the time. I guess it's all training. This is a type of tire that I would probably go after. And from that perspective, a really nice riding tire that's also not going to flat on me on a regular basis is kind of exactly what I'm going for.
You're right.
And
you're right.
I guess the price doesn't seem as crazy if you frame it that way versus like I'm not sure I'd pay $96 for a gator skin, for example.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is. It's like it's more comparable. Say the closest comparison would be probably something like a Vittoria Corsa Control, which is like a more puncture resistant performance tire versus a lighter weight, cheap training tire. But yeah, it's certainly still a lot of money for a bicycle tire, and especially given that it's the chance of going on your first ride and having said tire cut on you with any brand, it just means that €96 is a tall ask.
I'd first of all say, Caley, you could well pay with like a broken arm or a broken leg or something if you bought a gator skin. They may not be expensive in terms of cash, but they're quite slippery, I would say, at least in my experience. But I don't know. Like I ride GP 5000 STRs quite a bit. I really quite like those tires, and I ride on some truly atrocious roads. And now, touch wood or whatever, I realize I'm going to curse myself now, but I cannot remember the last time I had a puncture. And so the only reason I would consider the new AS is specifically as a training tire to save the STR for race day or for big event day. But at this price tag, it really doesn't make sense for me to consider it in that way.
Yeah, so thankfully the power of the internet has already offered this tire at discounts, even though you can't actually buy it. So like Bike24, I saw they had it for about €70. So I mean that at that point you're starting to get it a little bit more palatable, but it's still, yeah, I don't know. I'd be very wary of seeing a glass patch ahead.
The actual tire announcement that I was more excited by from Continental last week or this week is the new GP 5000 STT TR, the time trial. So it gone in the opposite direction, where the new
you would be
4-season is more robust. This is just faster, and it was a tire that first came out in a limited edition run at the Tour de France last year in 25mm only, and now it's available in 28, which I like.
Is it? So in the past, TT versions of Conti tires have been essentially made of paper.
Yeah.
Is it slightly more robust than that, or are we in paper territory?
I mean, if you believe what my eyes seen, Philippe Pagano punctured 3 times in the warm-up before the prologue in the Tour de France last year. So, but like that's not really all that important. What is important is when it holds air, it is very fast. So.
I love your mindset, Ronan. I'm going to move on from Conti, and I'm going to actually going to skip around on our little run sheet here a little bit and move to something else that is tire/tube related. This is just a small bit of very exciting news for everybody except for Ronan. Dave, tell me about the new Tubulitos.
Tubolito, so the thermoplastic, the TPU based inner tubes. Very much known to be an orange tube where you can see the orange valve poking out of your rim, and then that way everyone knows you've spent quite a bit of money on your inner tubes to save a few grams and ideally improve puncture resistance. They're now doing a black valve, so no one will know that you spent that money, which is quite cool. I think for me, certainly the times that I've run Tubolito actually as inner tubes rather than just carrying them as spares, I haven't liked those orange valves. I personally don't own any orange colored bikes where that matches. So the idea of just being able to get them, no extra cost, just in the option of a black valve is nice to me. And that's, if it were a product that you're looking to run full time, then that is certainly a welcome change. So yeah, it's a small bit of news, but a welcome one.
It's a bit
Ronan,
late,
why
Dave.
are you sad about this?
Well, Dave's news is a bit late in that having considered Tubulitos for a couple of years and just never really been able to justify the expenditure, I literally 3 days ago bought one with an orange valve, and now he tells me I could have one with a black valve. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Unfortunate timing all around. But it's cool that they're finally doing black ones. the orange doesn't really match much of anything, does it? And so
No, it was a branding
matches
exercise.
it's not too surprising.
There's like a new cycling media empire that had just launched recently, and the orange valves would match much of the color way that new media empire will be a great website. Should we say that?
There you go. So
I wonder if our kit will our kit be orange? I don't know. We have to talk to Tom about that. We'll find out in I don't know, a couple of weeks probably.
Yeah,
I assume we'll have a kit at some point, Dave.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's stay on tires and tubes. I want to stay on tires and tubes. So, Ronan, you've been doing a bit of snooping and a bit of reporting around what's going on with Quick Step's tire situation. Now, I don't know what it is about Quick Step. I feel like we talk about Specialized tires and Quick Step tires on a regular basis. They're back again this year, and you have noticed something interesting. So, what is that?
Well, yes, I have noticed, but also I should say, friend of the podcast, Zach Edwards, had also noticed this, and it was him and I who were initially discussing this. And basically, it's not even just Quickstep here, or Soudal Quickstep, whatever their name is this year, but basically every Specialized team in the professional peloton, who obviously also run Roval wheels, for some reason, it seems like from the start of this year, they have been racing on the Roval Rapide wheels with clincher setups, which is interesting given that Roval just released those new wheels last year with tubeless compatibility after a couple of years of sort of, is it tubeless, is it not tubeless, with the previous version of that wheel. So yeah, like it basically, Zach and I had been talking about it because Specialized had put on their Instagram a picture of SD Works doing a recon for Strade Bianche, and it was very clear from that photo, like, I mean, like, it was like front and center that they had a clincher valve in there, as opposed to, well, you know, it could obviously be a tubular if it's a new wheel and a new tire and all that, but it seems like it's a clincher because it's definitely not a tubeless, because it hasn't got the tubeless valve and the tubeless lock nut there. So I did a bit of digging, spoke to Specialized, and they basically said, look, we always support whatever the teams want to run, and the teams have had a lot of success in the past running our clincher setups in Strade Bianche, so we're going to let them do that. But then I did a bit more digging, looking around a couple of photo websites, and as I said, it seems like every Specialized team since the turn of the year has been racing with clincher setups, which sort of seemed a bit strange to me. And then I think, if I remember correctly, the only visual change to the wheels that were launched last year, which are tubeless compatible, was that the Roval decals are now in line with the tubeless valve, whereas previously they were offset on the rim from where the valve hole would be, or where you would see the valve coming through the rim. So I might have that back to front, but basically the point I'm trying to make is that in looking at these photos, it also appears like these teams are running the previous generation of these Rapide wheels, which is just even stranger. And I think, given the history with this wheel set,
they were lighter, right?
They were lighter, but
if you're going to run the clinchers, the rim's a bit lighter. Yeah,
that's true, and that's where I was going to go. Is that I think, given the history with this wheel set, our minds and almost instantaneously go to: is there some sort of problem, or what's the issue, or whatever? Is it a compatibility thing? And I don't believe it is, because I've trawled for long enough that I have found at least a couple of photos of Quickstep riders specifically still running the tubeless setup. As recently as this week, Tim de Klerk was seemingly one of the only riders in Paris-Nice on Roval wheels who was still riding with a tubeless setup. So if there was any compatibility issues there, if there was anything untoward, they just wouldn't have anybody riding a tubeless setup. So it sort of seems like this might just be some sort of other performance issue or something.
Specialized really needs to come up with an alternative to the valve nut, so Ronan can stop figuring out whether the team is running the product they're saying they're running or not.
Well, I mean, like, Specialized did confirm that they are running clincher, so there's no cover up or anything there, but it's certainly interesting nonetheless. I don't think we're in for a similar saga like we had the last time. I think there's something.
No. But what's the performance idea here? Because the rims are lighter with the previous generation rim. I think it was, if I'm going off the top of my head, it was like around the 30 gram mark per rim. But what's that's one performance benefit, but it's very marginal. What's your take on the tire? Like, it's probably a rolling resistance thing. What's going on there?
I mean, it's like 30 grams, even if it's 50 grams per wheel set, and even if there's a bit of a variance in there from wheel set to wheel set, and say you could buy hook or by crook find a wheel set that's 60 grams lighter, I don't really think that's going to make a difference, really. Like, but where my mind straight away goes in this is like, yes, okay, it could be latex inner tube and it could be a fast setup, but I don't know. I'm just always a big believer in tubeless setups for road, and that might go against what everybody else on this podcast thinks. But I would take the rolling resistance or the decreased rolling resistance gains over any sort of weight saving, especially one that's under, triple figures in terms of a saving in grams. So I don't know, and it should also be said that, they have the Alpinist wheel set also. And Julian Alaphilippe is racing with the Alpinist wheel set with a clincher setup also. So again, that to me says it's not a problem with the Rapides, and I know that's a lighter setup, so that could be proof of them making this change to save some weight. But I don't know, I almost see that like it's not a weight saving. If they're doing it with both wheel sets, it's not a weight saving thing. So I'm leaning towards some sort of tire thing that they just preferred the older tires or something. Like, I know Caley was saying you've had a few punctures with the new tubeless tires. So,
yeah, I had the previous generation and the newest generation. I've had not great luck on the puncture front. Now they're tubeless, and so they would seal. But if you're in the middle of a race and you suddenly go from whatever you're running, 75 psi to 50 before the thing can seal itself up, that's less than ideal. So maybe that's it. That's just pure speculation based off of the fact that I've flatted a couple of them. But yeah, who knows? To me, it feels more like probably a data-driven decision. Some rolling resistance number somewhere that has been shown to them. I mean, kudos to that team in particular. That was a team that for a long time, we kind of poked fun at for not always following the data, and it seems like they really are now. And I think that's actually probably a lot of that comes down to Specialized and their ability to sort of convince mechanics and riders of the numbers that they have internally.
That's what I was going to say, is that if this was one team, then you could say there's something they've found there. But I think weirdly, I'm always going to say like this is actually kudos to the Specialized team. If it turns out it is a performance thing, I should say, because they have just got all their teams to go to tubeless and then go back to clincher and then go back to tubeless and now seemingly return to clincher again. And if that is, if they have found that, for whatever reason, these clincher tires are faster and they have continually reconvinced the teams of this, that's something that not many brands could do.
Kudos, I guess.
Given how notoriously stuck in their ways that some pro teams can be.
Yeah.
I think I was going to start that point by saying I believe this is coming from Specialized, not from the teams, because every rider on every team is doing this. So that's the point I was trying to make, I think.
That's certainly what it would suggest. Yeah. And we've written into Ronan's contract that he has to actually inspect the nuts on every single valve at the end of every single major race throughout the entire season. So we'll keep you up to date on this. And
thankfully I managed to get you to cut out the bit where it said I have to check if they've got internal liners or not.
That's for next year. We got to leave something for next year. All right. I want to move on here. I want to switch over to something in a completely different area. Dave, you added this to the run sheet. Why Cycles becomes Revel Bikes. This is just a little bit of news.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Two Colorado companies, Y Cycles and Revel Bikes, actually under the same ownership. They've just been separate brands. So Y Cycles pre-existed Revel Bikes. They're sort of best known as titanium all-road gravel road bikes. And then Revel Bikes are sort of known as quite cool carbon mountain bikes, which launched in 2019. So, yeah, basically they've decided that from here on, Y Cycles is being brought into the Revel bike brand. So those titanium frames will continue to be available, but now under the Revel Bikes company. So Revel has expanded its portfolio of bikes, and Y Cycles will, in their words, be sunsetted as a brand. So yeah, just for anyone keen on those titanium bikes, they still exist, just under a new name.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks for that update, Dave. I want to move on to one of our favorite segments every week, On Your Mind and Over the Head of Your Family. I'm going to kick over to Ronan first. Ronan, what has been on your mind and over the head of your family this week?
I mean, pretty much everything on my mind is over the head of my family. Because it's usually bike stuff. So I'll give you a choice. I can either tell you about how I had a 3-way Google Meet with myself, or I can tell you about the endoscope that I had, that were both about optimizing my time trial position. So your choice now.
Second one.
Second one.
That sounds great.
So, and you actually might like this because I was, obviously the difficulty with time trial positions is seeing where you're going. So I kind of wondered if I got an endoscope from Amazon and stuck the camera off the front of the tri-bars and put the display between my hands, could I then like look down and see where I was going in a more aerodynamic position? You can on the turbo trainer. I haven't tried it outdoors yet, but definitely much.
How did Ronan die? Well,
it works much better than the belay glasses that I tried before. Those you just cannot make out. Like you turn right and you steer left. The climbing glasses.
So you need to explain this because so you've told Dave Roman about this before, and so I know what you're talking about. You need to explain to the audience out there what insanity you are on about right now.
So I would say a bit of a hack or a bodge maybe that I had for a similar attempt to try to see where I was going better on a time trial bike. I thought the glasses that climbers use so that they can like see above them without all day looking upwards and getting the creak in their neck. I think they're called belay glasses, if I remember correctly.
The belay, the person at the bottom with the ropes, keeping the person that's actually climbing alive, basically. Otherwise, you have to look up the whole time.
Yeah, but I'm afraid of heights, so I've never done that thing. But basically, I wondered if those could be used to, instead of help me look up, just help me look forward when my head was looking down. That was scary. That was very
Didn't
scary.
someone make a periscope glasses for a while with the goal of time trials?
Probably.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Ronan, my issue with your endoscope idea is normally those things, the technology there are designed for tight, confined spaces to shine, to display something in a very difficult to see in dark place. The outside, the field of view is a little bit different to that. So how did that end up for you?
As I said, I haven't tried it outside yet, so let's see. But it's definitely been fun, like looking inside frames and looking inside disc wheels and looking inside loads of stuff. So yeah. I like, if I'm honest, I don't think this is going to work.
We appreciate the effort, though. Someone's got to try, and that someone might as well be Ronan.
Yeah. I mean, what about a GoPro and then VR goggles?
I have also cycled with VR goggles, I should say.
Oh no.
Yeah. And for good reason. There's a cycle route that I want to do, and I couldn't figure out if the roads at the start of it, which are at the other end of Ireland, are like too hilly and too narrow and too difficult to ride on a time trial bike. So I set up like a Google Maps route and cycled through it with VR, using the VR Zoom app, which is basically like a fitness training app for the what do you call the VR goggles? You know the ones, the Facebook ones, the Meta VR goggles. Using those, you can use that app, do some indoor training, and use like Google Street View to piece pictures of Street View together to make a route. It's actually, I actually kind of enjoyed it. Got me doing a couple of, for a recovery spin or something, you can just go like literally anywhere on the planet and ride your bike in VR. So
is it Is it like using Google Street View normally, where every few hundred meters you have to stop and click the arrow?
I would say, Dave, if you're the kind of person like yourself, it might not be for you. I mean, like you have to kind of accept that this is not going to be perfect. But it's different, and it's a nice experience every once in a while. So from that point of view, yes, it was very much like Street View. It doesn't stop, but it's like, yeah, it's not exactly HD, let's say, nor is it like any kind of reality, never mind virtual reality. But it's like for the purpose that I wanted it for, to see the road, because it will interact with smart trainers and that, and it provides resistance the same as like the gradient on the road. It's got all that detail on it.
Wow. Okay.
So it you can actually get a feel for the route that you want to try without having to go to the other end of Ireland to actually try it.
We really need Zach on this episode, because I think he would hate this even more than I do. And I need some backup. So I'm going to move us on from that. Dave, what's on your mind?
Ronan gave a choice. I also have two things on my mind, which is why I'm worried about 12-speed mechanical shifting coming to potentially more mainstream, or my woes of stem alignment tools. Which one?
I want the first one. I feel like I've heard about the second one. I want the first one.
But the second one I've got way more to talk about now. There's like 5 different tools. But okay, I guess we'll save that one. There's rumors of 105 mechanical, 105 12-speed mechanical coming to the market. There's also rumors of GRX 12-speed mechanical coming to the market. And yesterday I was working on a bike with Campagnolo record 12-speed mechanical shifting, and reminded of the fact that as you tighten up the spacing of that cassette, your derailleur adjustments become insanely more sensitive. And I was very much struggling to get this record group set to behave like a record group set should. And it basically comes down to the fact that you need perfect cable runs to make it work as well as it should, and not feel like a 15-year-old clapped out Shimano Tiago group set. And that's my issue, is that I believe the bike industry is about to lead us all down a road of bikes with lousy cable routing optimization, because most bikes are now being designed with electronics in mind. And they're then going to give us this very sensitive mechanical group set that requires perfect cable runs and perfect maintenance to ensure that it works well, and then sell it to a mass market of people that are not going to maintain their bikes correctly. And everyone's just going to be worse off for it. So my point is that I would much rather see us stick 12-speed and keep 12-speed, generally speaking, as a performance group set that is run by robots and batteries. And for lower cost bikes, we stick to fewer gears, which are easier to adjust and less sensitive to gremlins.
I feel like 11 is enough.
And you can feed them after midnight.
11 is enough.
11's plenty.
Can we just call it? Let's call it there. 11 is enough for mechanical.
I think so.
Sweet spot.
Unfortunately,
I would actually say that the mechanical sweet spot was like 9.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. 10. Well, 10 they screwed up, and then 11 they fixed it. But yeah, it's I am concerned about this, and given that pretty much every road bike is moving to some form of internal cable routing, there's only going to be more drag in that system. I'm scared. I'm worried that great shifting is going to require great mechanics and consistent maintenance. And that's just not how a 105 level bike should be.
I actually have that record 12-speed group set also, and I've had it on 2 different frames. I've had it on the Willier 110 Pro, which has full internal cable routing from the shifter to the derailleur, and that was a disaster. Like, I mean, just never worked. And whether it was through myself kinking the cable, trying to get it through the the sort of cable routing or whatever, for whatever reason, it was just from day one never really worked. But the exact same group set on my Tarmac SL6 is just a dream, and that's only partially internal cable routed. So you've got externally routed, externally on the handlebars. It doesn't go into the stem, and it goes in through the down tube, and it works an absolute dream. But the fear of kinking a cable, I had to put the bike in the car a couple of weeks ago, and something went through my mind at that moment. I just heard you, Caley, and James all saying mechanical, 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 and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to kink this cable, and it's like £3,000 for a new Campag Extreme, whatever the name is for those mechanical cables,
and that's on discount.
Yeah. Well, I can't even remember what the exact name for those cables are now, but it just will not work without the specific cable, and I've used that bike quite a lot over the last month or two, and it's been fine. But when it does need a tune, it's like tune it half as much as you think it needs, and then do a little bit less. It's that kind of fine tuning.
Yeah,
but it is a dream when it's working.
I'm taking us down a bit of a tangent here, but recently, I'd say in the last 5 years, Campagnolo has done a pretty good job of making fairly good mechanics feel like bad mechanics. This is probably a very controversial thing to say, but consistently, like, I'm very comfortable with anything Shimano. I'm very comfortable with anything SRAM. I can always get that working the way it should work. No drop chains, perfect shifts. Campagnolo, for whatever reason, EPS has its own issues. It's a weird group set. I don't think there's enough adjustment in EPS, so sometimes you get crankset configurations where you can't get it to fully stop rubbing the way you want it to. But then the mechanical stuff, specifically 12-speed, occasionally ECAR or ECAR, it just feels like it's just another level of sensitivity, and it makes me judge my abilities. And it also makes me occasionally wish that I didn't claim to be a mechanic.
On the flip side, I will say that it makes decidedly average mechanics like myself feel like superheroes when you know how to fix EPS. That's just like, it was like whenever the 11-speed Ultegra first came out, and the front derailleur was almost, without trying to make myself sound foolish, but the front derailleur was very differently set up than all front derailleurs that came before it. Just knowing how to get that to work, that was like godlike status locally, just being able to fix that thing. So Campag is a bit the same for me. The problem is nobody uses Campag except myself. So
yes,
I can't get to display the one skill that I have.
Yeah, no one knows how amazing you are because no one else has bothered to buy into that group set. So that's the oh well. But yeah, the Campy does a lot of great stuff, so don't get me wrong, I still have a lot of love for that brand, but just from a mechanics point of view, it is the most sensitive of the three group sets to set up, in my opinion. And there's nuances to it, but then there's also, just like what Ronan said, that it basically, that 12-speed stuff requires such a low friction cable set because it's so sensitive. And that cable set is really not cheap. So yeah, anyway, that's my little rant. Caley, what's on your mind?
I'm going to skip myself because we are low on time.
Okay.
And I feel like we had two really good ones there. And I want to make sure we get our PSA this week before we open up the floor to questions. So what's our PSA this week, Dave?
I believe it's to measure the spacing of your cranks. So Ronan's backing away right now because he's
oh no!
Yeah,
was this a Ronan one? I just assumed it was.
No, it's actually me. Ronan doesn't want to be involved in this because he's had his own internet battles with this topic. But yeah, me for specifically speaking, mountain bike. So non-Shimano cranks tend to use a variety of spacers to let you set up your chain line correctly to the bike, and then to also just get your the bearing spacing right. So then you can add your bearing preload. And those spaces, I guess you need to be careful. And this is not something that I see people do well a lot, is that if you put those spaces in the wrong orientation, like you put some on the left versus some on the right, what you end up doing is you end up spacing the crank asymmetrically to the frame, and then you're going to be riding off center. And I think, the thing there is that the only way to know whether you've done this or not is to actually measure it. And I don't think a lot of people have been doing this. So what I found to be really useful is to
I think no people have been doing this, Dave. Zero people have been doing this.
And I know this because, like SRAM, for example, they don't make 0.5 millimeter shims for dub. They do them in 1 millimeter increments, and my cranks were off center by 0.5 millimeter. So then I have gone to using aftermarket shims to solve for this. And so I know for a fact that there are people out there with off-centered cranks. So yeah, my way of measuring this is to go off the seat tube. You assuming your seat tube is roughly symmetrical. The seat tube connects to your seat post, so you'd hope that is the center of your bike. But yeah, I remove the pedals from the cranks, and then I run a digital caliper. So the long part of the digital caliper, I probably actually have one because who doesn't have that on the desk? So for people watching in, you've got the bit that comes out the end, which is normally used as the depth gauge. You stick that through the center of the stick that through the center of the pedal thread. And then that gives
I'm watching like I'm ever going to do this.
That gives you your depth gauge to the seat tube, and then you do it on the other side, and that will tell you whether you're how you're doing for the balance of your Q factor. Ronan? Thoughts?
I was going to say, I've just recently run into this issue again, in that I was using a chainring that was a one-by chainring that was much too large for the frame that I was installing the crankset on. And so I had to shim the drive side crank out away from the frame, just to ensure that it wouldn't rub, just like sort of building to see if this setup would work. And in the end up, I couldn't have ridden it because it was like, although it didn't, the larger chainring didn't rub on the chainstays or anything, it just meant that my crank was off center by like 1.5 centimeters or something ridiculous. Like, yeah, it was a lot. So,
and then you didn't want to offset that with a wider left pedal because then your Q factor would be too wide. Yeah, okay.
I mean,
it feels too much like a mountain bike,
but I was like,
don't do
that. I want to do that, but yeah, I have to draw the line somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's my understanding with SRAM equipped bikes and other non-Shimano bikes is that this is probably more common than we realize. So I think it's a PSA for mechanics out there setting up new cranks. I think it's a PSA for people doing their own work that, take your pedals off, grab a digital caliper or a vernier caliper, and see whether they're symmetrical.
We're really living up to the name of the podcast today.
Thank you.
I'm very much appreciating it. Nice work, Dave, Ronan. There's your PSA. Measure your cranks. Make sure they're not off to the side. I love it. All right, so here's what we're going to do here. We're going to try to do a bit of a Q&A. Do we have questions out there? We have requests. Here we go. Request to speak. Let's see if I can do this. Joe B.
Am I live?
Joe.
Awesome.
You're live. Ask your question.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
First ever caller. Exciting times.
Great. So glad you guys are doing this. Dave, follow-up question on your calipers for measuring your crank arms. Why not just measure the spread from the inside, from the seat tube to the inside of the crank? Why take the pedal off?
Oh, that's a very good question. You can definitely do that. I just found the gap in order to align the caliper and get it into that gap. It just gets a little bit tricky, and then you start to wonder whether you're going off the same point of the seat tube. So the seat tube's generally curved. So what I found is when doing that, I wasn't entirely confident that I was hitting the same point of the curvature of the seat tube every time. So by going off the center, I could kind of I drew a dot in the center of the tube, and then I could hit that dot each time. So yeah, that's that's the reason. And now I feel like more of a geek than I ever did.
That was the point.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
question, Joe. I have no idea how to boot you out of this, so I think if you could hit leave the stage. There we go.
Hey.
We have another one from LAC. Who's speaking?
Hi, it's Jacob from London. I was just thinking about your comments about internal cabling and mechanical group sets, and given that aero seems kind of dead a bit because all the bikes look the same, do you think that we'll see a kind of new generation of ethos-like super lightweight bikes that are kind of designed around external cables and mechanical group sets for that kind of high-end connoisseur budget hold?
I certainly hope so. I mean, right now the trend is towards more hidden cables rather than fewer, but yeah, I certainly hope so. And I think Specialized has been so successful with that ethos that I don't doubt others will follow and wanting to get in on that. So I think there does seem to be enough consumer demand for this. Ronan?
I'm with you, Dave. I hope we see more bikes like that also, but I'm skeptical that we will, simply because, as you said, Specialized have been so successful with it. And how do you do it without recreating the ethos? And from a Specialized point of view, it's now been around for 3 years. How do they update that frame? You know, they can't really make it any lighter, I suspect. And if another brand comes out with one that isn't quite as light, it's always going to be, well, it's not as light as the ethos. So
yeah, I've suggested this before, but I would genuinely like to see Trek sort of bring back Klein as a brand maybe, and do like a really high-end alloy bike with
the paint,
with old Imron paint, and I think that could actually be a very popular seller. Or even like Cannondale doing like rebirthing like the CAD 9 kind of thing. Or an American made Cannondale. I think something like that could actually, there's a gap in the market for a bike like that. And I'd be most excited to see them go that way rather than just try beat the ethos at being an ethos.
My sort of final thoughts on that are, I wonder if most of that market is still taken up with custom, right? Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people, if you're interested in that sort of thing, you know, the connoisseur type, right? You may also then be interested in seeking out something that is not off the shelf. I think that a lot of custom builders have obviously realized this and have done a really good job kind of filling that kind of space anyway. So I could see other big brands try, but I'm not sure you'd see the success like the Athos again, unless somebody found something really clever. That was a great question. Ryan.
Hello.
Ryan and I, you may hear the same train in the background.
Indeed.
Ryan, what's your question?
I have a lot of questions, but I think I'm most curious about this Specialized Epic that has sort of leaked. Pictures have leaked out there into the world. What do you guys think is going on there?
The Trekalized?
Yeah.
Dave, what are your thoughts on this? We should maybe a bit of context first. So there's a new cross country mountain bike.
Yeah.
Clearly coming from Specialized. We've seen it under pro athletes. Mm-hmm. It looks a lot like the Trek with the sort of
Super Cow. Yeah,
the Super Cow with the rear shock kind of in line with the top tube, basically.
Yeah,
kind of hidden inside the top tube almost.
Yeah,
and like it looks almost identical, which is hence the Trekalized joke. Kind of a gap in the market for Specialized itself, and sort of this like almost a soft tail, because the Trek is 60 mil rear travel.
Yeah, this one I think will be more travel because it does have from the photos I've seen, it appears to have like a proper lower pivot, so the whole rear arm would be separated and able to pivot. So in theory, I'd imagine it would beat the Trek in terms of suspension sensitivity and also travel is my speculation. I'm excited about this. I think the previous generation Specialized Epic was insanely light, and this has potential to be even lighter, and also just less complexity in it. So I think this is an exciting space to watch, and I think that bike has potential to be incredible. And I also think it's really cool that these brands like Specialized are starting to understand that you can have multiple suspension designs in your bike lineup. So traditionally, they might have tried to shoehorn their old FSR pivot across everything from XC racing through to downhill. Whereas now you're seeing this great division. They're using different linkages for their downhill bikes and different linkages in like their mid-range travel bikes. And then they're coming up with this sort of thing, which is very much only going to work in a short travel application. So I'm keen for it. Caley?
I'm super excited about this bike. I mean, the Epic's been my favorite XC bike for a very long time, and this looks like a good update, and very excited about it. I wonder if we're going to get some new brain action.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, I haven't looked at those photos super close. I didn't see anything obvious or like down, the brass inertia down at the wheel or anything like that. It seems like
I didn't see an inertia valve tube down there.
No.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have something that acts like a brain. Brain being like basically an automatic suspension system. So it's bump sensitivity. So the valves only open up when a force from beneath from the wheel is felt, and then the valves in the suspension open up to let the suspension be active. Really clever system. Specialized own the patents on it, which is why no one else really does it. But yeah, it's be interesting to see if they keep with that or not, because it does have downsides, mainly small bump sensitivity.
Ronan is getting a small taste of how I feel when he talks time trial bikes. We got a couple more here. So we have 2 more questions already in the list. If there's anybody else who has a question, drop it in right now, so I kind of know how many are left, and we'll do a few more, and then we gotta wrap up because we're gonna run out of time. Dr. Tallrider, how are you?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
Did you have any hold music while you waited?
I did not.
No, we'll have to work on that.
Elevator music.
What's your question?
Well, I had thought about Dave's point on mechanical shifting being more of a downside when you get into higher speeds. And first, I generally agree that the more gears you add, there's diminishing marginal returns, particularly when you're in a 2x setup, right? Like I understand Eccar wanted to go 13 for the same reason, like a roll-off hub would have 14 because it's 1x.
Yeah.
But I think you actually can. So, and I'm someone who uses like 8 and 9 speed on all my stuff, right? Like I totally buy that. But I think you actually can make a mechanical shifting work well with more speeds. You just need to redesign the cable pull increments, right? Like, so Shimano's Q's system, they have Shimano's original 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I think 11 speed for road. They had the same cable pull all the way through, right? And you started getting bigger and bigger cassettes in the rear, more speeds, and it just stopped working well, or became way more finicky. But
different cable pull, but I understand the point.
Per increment, right? You just need to have, for a shift lever, you just need to have a larger diameter, or for a ratchet, you just need the gears to be larger and maybe fit a fatter lever body to do it. But I think you can do it. It just means redesigning the cable pull.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, the concern is like I own a mountain bike with XTR 12-speed mechanical shifting, which is beautiful. And when that is set up correctly, it works so well. But as soon as that group set gets neglected, or even in the cheaper iterations of that group set, so like a Dior or SLX level, it doesn't take a very big stick for that shifting to go very bad, and to the point where you probably can't adjust it correctly again without replacing that derailleur. And that's my concern is I think out of the box, this 105 will work really well, like when it's new. I guess my worry is just that typically the vast majority of people that own bikes with 105 tend to not do the maintenance intervals that they should. And I think after a set number of kilometers and a set number of a set amount of neglect, I think those group sets will work far worse than an equivalent bike with say like wider gear spacing.
That makes sense. And it's I was thinking the cable pull was like the only variable, but you can have as much cable pull per shift increment as you want.
Yeah.
But if you bend the rear derailleur hanger slightly, that's going to affect a 12-speed, maybe 9-speed.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, the distance from the chain to the next cog as well, like that's all more sensitive as well. So yeah, there's just, cable pull is certainly one area where they can improve on that, but unfortunately there's other issues, and that like the hanger straightness is a perfect example of just how sensitive that needs to be. Like there's quite a few bike shops out there that don't actually own derailleur hanger tools that are sensitive enough to correctly adjust for 12-speed hangers, and that's just the matter of fact. It's like if you get a 10-year-old Park Tool derailleur hanger, there's too much play in it to get it close enough for perfect shifting with these new group sets. And that's my worry. Is just I think we're leading a mass market into this sort of very delicate component.
Maybe Jan Heine is waiting with his derailleur.
Yeah.
No idea, but thank you.
Good stuff. Well, that's all the questions. So thanks everybody. That was super fun for a first attempt at this. I think we mostly figured out the technology, and I hope that we actually recorded everything that we thought we recorded, so we can put an episode out to the rest of the world. But yeah, thanks to our live studio audience today. That was pretty amazing. And thanks to everybody who signed up already for Escape Collective. If you haven't already, escapecollective.cc. It supports what we're doing here. It supports everything we want to do in the future. And even though we have hit our sort of initial launch target, that's the start line, not the finish line. That got us to a point where, like I said, we can pay people and make sure this thing does happen. But we have big ambitions, and we have lots of things we want to do, and we need more members to do that. It's a very, very simple equation.
I still don't have a tool budget, so we need that.
Dave has no tool budget.
Yeah,
we need to work on that.
Yeah. We should.
I think that triggers at 50,000 members, Dave. I think that's where we are. So you got a little ways to go.
That's a wait. That's a wait and a half. All
right. Well, everybody in our live audience, again, thank you. Everybody out there, thanks for listening. Please give us a share, give us a like, give us a review on iTunes, etc. And we will be back next week with another episode of Geek Warning. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.